Hello learners, I am Dr. Subodh Kersharwani, working with Indira Gandhi National Open University in School of Management Studies in an associate professor capacity. The topic which I am going to talk today is time series analysis. This is a very important topic because when we are going to talk about research methodology, when we are going to talk about statistical analysis, I think this is the backbone of any particular subject because it talks about the relational and trend analysis. So if we go into the backdrop and recapitulate ourselves in a faster mode, I think the first block was talking about the research and data collections, which have roughly somewhere around 9 to 10 presentations, and then block 2 was talking more about processing and preservation of data. So we have seen that how we are going to preserve the data either in a diagrammatic manner or in a graphical manner, or the certain tools which are going to apply. So we are here to talk more about the third block, which is relational and trend analysis. So we have seen that in our preceding sessions we have very elaborately talk about correlation and simple regression. So this correlation and simple regression was talking more about the relationship between the variables, as well as how that one variable change in one variable is going to affect the other variable. So this was also having a very elaborative the discussion. Then today's discussion revolves around the time series analysis. So this time series analysis, as I have already told, this is basically one of the important ingredient of relational and trend analysis. And if you go into the backdrop of trend analysis, you will find out that trend analysis is a technique used in technical analysis that attempts to predict the future stock price movements based on the recently observed trend data. So it's not just we are adhered to the future stock price, but anything where you want to know about the index, know about the trend. This is very important. So trend analysis is based on the idea that what has happened in the past give traders an idea of what will happen in the future, because this particular course, this research methodology and statistical analysis is somewhat cater the postgraduate students of commerce. So and majority of them are into land up into the business. So and trading and commerce and all business is one of the important ingredients of business. So what we mean to say that trend analysis is very important aspect when you are going to talk about that. There are certain examples of trend analysis and examining expense like items to find out if there are any unusual expenditures in a reporting period that require further investigation. Forecast revenue and expense line items into the future for budgeting, for estimating future results. So this is basically some of the good examples of trend analysis, because this trend analysis is talking more about if you talk about the correlation and regression, this also gives you the trend, and this time series analysis or the index number is also one of the important aspects which are going to cover in this particular block. So trend analysis quantifies and explains trends and patterns in a noisy data over time. A trend is an upwards or downward shift in the data set over time. So sometimes you will find out if you see the trend, sometimes the data is going in an upward direction, or moving in a downward direction, in a southward direction, or in a northward direction. So it means that there are certain changes which are forcing them to go down, and there are certain changes which are making them up. So it might be an instance to be used to predict a trend such as bull market run. So anyway, we will have a very elaborative session which can throw a light on the preamble part of time series. So we all must have heard that people are saying that the price of different objects had decreased or increased with time. These different objects could be anything like the petrol, the diesel price, the gold price, the silver price, or the eatable items. So the rate of interest, and this is not confined to this thing. We have seen that as far as the rate of interest fluctuates in banks and different for different kinds of loans. I think we all are moving from this pandemic stage, and we have seen that the banks have massively cut down their rate of interest. The reason behind is that the penetration in the bank as far as the loan is concerned is quite less. So that could be the reason. So if the footfall is less, I think the demand will be less. So what are all this data, how it is useful? So these types of data are time series data that go through analysis of forecast. So we will throw a light on forecast. We will see what are certain trend analysis which are very important. But anyway, prior to going into the depth of this time series, let's throw a light in a faster mode. What is time anyway? So because time is a very precious item, and time may be surrogate measure for other process, that is maturation, aging, growth, inflation, and many of the process we are interested in are described in terms of their temporal behavior, like policy impact, arms races, growth and decay models, compound interest or inflation, and learning. So what we have observed that time is something which is very important, and there are certain importance this time series data analysis have. Like the time series data analysis is increasingly important due to the massive production of such data through the Internet of Things, the digitization of healthcare, and the rise of smart cities. There are certain the trends which are coming up, and you have find out that technology is changing the things in a very faster mode, and either it could be the health industry, or it could be the urbanization of the cities, or whatever it could be. There we are going to find out that there's a great use of data analysis. So as continuous monitoring and data collection become more common, the need for competent time series analysis with both statistical and machine learning techniques will increase. So this is what the need of the hour, and what we have observed that as far as the machine learning techniques are concerned, we have seen that this statistical analysis is massively changed with the change of time. So covering innovation in time series, data analysis, and use cases from the real world. So what we have observed that this innovation in time series data analysis is also changing with the change of time. And as far as this particular presentation is concerned, this is for MCO3 students of IGNOU which is going to help them to solve the most common data engineering and analysis changes in time series using both traditional statistics and modern machine learning techniques. So we will also see in the coming days that how the statistics is going to be changed. There was a time when statistics was just the quite manual in nature, but now you find out that there are certain tests which we used to do with the help of statistical packages. Either it could be the MATLAB, or the SPSS software, or the eViews, or certain the things which we are going to do in Microsoft Excel also. So these are the things which are quite important in the present scenario. So what we had studied about measurement and scaling techniques, we have seen that we have massively talked about what exactly the measurement is, and what are the comparative scaling techniques, what are non-comparative scaling techniques, and there also we have talked more about the measurements. So the previous block was more talking about the measurement, but here we are using the measurement to analyze the trend, to know the trend, what are the the ups and downs in the analysis. So time series is going to talk about measurements of quantity which can taken over time, are fundamental data objects studied across the scientific disciplines, including measurements of stock prices in finance, fluxes in astrophysics, atmospheric air temperatures in meteorology, and human heartbeats in medicine. So when you are going to talk about the measurement of quantity, I think there are certain ways by which we are going to do that. So because of the tremendous variety of conditions, time series is used by both nature and human beings for communication, description, and data visualization. So also time is the physical quantity, and elements, coefficient, parameters, and characteristics of time series data are mathematical quantities. So time series can be real time or real world interpretation. So why we are more emphasizing on the real time, because if you see the trend, there was a time when data was just the mobile number, or the name or email, but right now the real time data is somewhat different. The interpretation of real time data is changing with the change of time, and what we have observed that real time data is quite agile in nature. So this is what the trend is coming up, and you find out that trend analysis or the data analytics is going to play a very important role. So now the question is, why time series? So my personal view is that time series models are theoretically fundamentally more important than cross-sectional models. The models that we are really interested in are those that helps us model how systems change across time vis-a-vis what they look like at any given snapshot in time. So statistical tools may often improve their degrees of freedom by using series methods. Sometimes this means larger n. Now what we have observed that what is exactly a time series is. A time series is a series of data points indexed in time order. Most commonly, a time series is a sequence taken at successive equally spaced points in time. Thus, it is a sequence of discrete time data. So, time series analysis can be useful to see how a given asset, security, or economic variable changes over time. So, while going through this particular chapter, this particular presentation, we are able to acclimatize ourselves with knowing and how to define the concept of time series, appreciate the role of time series in short-term forecasting, explain the concepts of time series, and estimates the trend values by different methods. There are certain methodologies which are going to play a very important role. And on the other hand, it also helps us to find and wrangle time series data, undertake exploratory time series data analysis, store temporal data, simulate time series data, generate and select features for time series, measure errors. We have seen that in the previous sessions, when we are talking more about the correlation regression, we have a clause of standard errors. So by this way, you are going to measure errors also, forecast and classify time series with machine or deep learning, evaluate accuracy and performance. So what we have learned in the previous unit, talking about the statistical treatment of data collected for research work, and nature of data varied from case to case. We have observed that, and in this, we have come across quantitative data for a group of respondents collected with a view to understanding one or more parameters of that group, such as investment, profit, consumption, weight, etc. But now, when a nation, state, or an institution of our business unit intend to study the behavior of some elements such as price of a product, export of a product, investment, sales, profit, as they have behaved over a period of time, the information shall have to be collected for a fairly long period, usually at equally time intervals. Thus, a set of quantitative data collected and arranged on the basis of time is called time series, and depend on the research objective. The unit of time may be decade, a year, month, or a week. So typical time series are the sales of a firm in successive years, monthly production figures of a cement mill, daily closing price of shares in Bombay stock market, early temperature of a patient. So these are some of the typical examples, and we are going to take some very good examples which are going to talk about that. So what is time series? Now, after talking a lot about trend analysis, what exactly the genesis behind the time series is? So essentially, time series is a sequence of numerical data obtained at regular time intervals, occurs in many areas. It's not confined to the domains or what we have talked about, like economic, finance, environment, and medicine, but crosses the boundaries and put it where boots in health, industry, and other areas. So the aims of time series analysis are to describe and summarize time series data, fit models, and make forecasts. So time series analysis comprises methods for analyzing time series data in order to extract meaningful statistics and other characteristics of the data. And time series forecasting is the use of a model to predict future values based on the previously observed value. This is more important. So now, on the other hand, if we go into the backdrop and find out, a time series is a sequence of measures of a given phenomena taken at regular time intervals such as hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, or every so many years. So stock series are measures of activity at a point in time and can be thought of as stock takes. Example given, what we can take, like monthly labor force survey takes stock of whether a person was employed in the reference week. And flow series are series which are measure of activity to date, that is, the retail, current account deficit, balance of payment, etc. So why are time series data different from other data? Now this is more important because the data is quite raw in nature and we are going to extract the information. But when you are going to talk about the time series data, which is quite in a real time mode, a data which can give you the real scenario of the consumers, if you're talking about the sellers, or talking about the company's trend, or the health industry, or whatever it could be. Data are not independent, and much of the statistical theory relies on data being independent and identically distributed. Large sample size are good, but long time series are not always the best. Series often change with time, so bigger is not always better. So what we have to do, we have to bifurcate the things in a small chunks and then take a decision. So time series analysis through various mode of data visualization is this. You can see there are a lot of images, and talking more about the trend analysis. If you see the first image which talks about how the trend is going in an upward direction and then coming down, and here also the trend is going in a different manner. So we are going to talk about all those trends with the help of certain the models what we have in a more precise manner and more, with the help of examples. So you see here also the trend is going on. You see it is going down, it's going upward, then going little bit up, then going down. So these are some of the good examples of data visualization and what are users looking for in an economic time series. Important features of economic indicator series include direction, turning points, and over and above to that, in addition to that, we want to see if the series is increasingly or decreasingly more slowly, faster than it was before. So when should time series analysis best be used? Now we do not assume the existence of deterministic model governing the behavior of the system concerned. Instances where deterministic factors are not readily available and the accuracy of the estimate can be compromised on the need. So we will only consider univariate time series. Now there are forecasting horizons like long term, medium term and short term. So if you see the forecasting horizons 5+ years in the future, that is R&D, plant location, product planning, principally judgment based. And when you are going to talk about the medium term, like 1 season to 2 years, aggregate planning, capacity planning, sales forecast, and the mixture of quantitative methods and judgment. And then finally, the short term is 1 day to 1 year, less than 1 season, demand forecasting, staffing levels, purchasing inventory levels, and quantitative methods. So this is called forecasting horizons. And the basic steps in forecasting task is that you're going to find out the problem definition, gathering information, and exploratory analysis, choosing and fitting models, using and evaluating a forecast model. So anyway, if we are going to talk about the problem definition, this is the most difficult part of forecasting. Defining the problem carefully requires an understanding of the way the forecast will be used, who requires the forecast, and how the forecast functions fit within the organization requires the forecast. A forecaster need to spend time talking to everyone who will be involved in collecting data, maintaining databases, and using the forecast for future planning. So this is called the way of doing the things and one of the steps of the forecasting task. And second is gathering information. There are always at least 2 kinds of information required, that is statistical data and the accumulated expertise of the people who collect the data and use the forecast. So what we have done, so when you're talking about the statistical data, this is considered to be the secondary data, and the accumulated expertise of the people who collect the data and use the forecast. You will find out, in our previous session when we have studied about the secondary data and primary data, we have seen that how the data is going to be collected through respondents by floating the questionnaires. So this is one of the way of doing the things, the accumulated expertise of the people who collect the data and use the forecast. Often it will be difficult to obtain enough historical data to be able to fit a good statistical model. Occasionally old data will be less useful due to structural changes in the system being forecast. Then we may choose to use only the most recent data. So however, remember that a good statistical model will handle evolutionary changes in the system and don't throw away good data unnecessarily. So now if you talk about the exploratory analysis, always start by graphing the data. Are there consistent patterns? Is there a significant trend? These are the questions which comes in the mind. Is seasonality important? Is there evidence of the presence of the business cycles? Are there any outliers in the data that need to be explained by those with expert knowledge? How strong are the relationship among the variables available for analysis? Various tools have been developed to help with this analysis. So this is called exploratory analysis. And choosing and fitting models. The best model to use depends on the availability of the historical data, the strength of relationship between the forecast variable and any explanatory variables, and the way in which the forecasts are to be used. It is common to compare 2 or 3 potential models, and each model is itself an artificial construct that is based on a set of assumptions, either it could be explicit or implicit, and usually involve 1 or more parameters that must be estimated using the known historical data. So this is what the thing is there. So once a model has been selected and its parameter estimated, the model is used to make forecasts. The performance of the model can only be properly evaluated after the data for the forecast period has become available. A number of methods have been developed to help in assessing the accuracy of forecasts, and there are also organizational issues in using and acting on the forecast. So now what we have observed that based on the above discussion, we can understand the definition given by the few statisticians with respect to the time series. And if you go more to the backdrop, you will find out that time series consist of statistical data which are collected, recorded over successive increments. When quantitative data are arranged in the order of their occurrence, the resulting statistic series is called a time series. The analysis of time series is of great utility not only to research workers but also to economists, businessmen and scientists for the following reason: as it helps the understanding past behavior of the variables under study. On the other hand, it facilitates in forecasting the future behavior with the help of changes that have taken place in the past. It helps in planning future course of action, and also it helps in knowing current accomplishment. And finally, it is helpful to make comparison between different time series and significant conclusion drawn therefrom. So that is more important. So there are certain examples of time series data: number of babies born in each hour, daily closing price of a stock, the monthly trade balance of Japan for each year, or the trading between Japan and India as far as the import or export is concerned, GDP of the country measured each year. So what we have observed that there are certain examples of time series analysis, and consider it's going to helpful. If you go more to the backdrop, you will find out that it's going to help in predicting the expected utilities, simulate series, presume relationship, and the main objective is to recognize trends, seasonal behavior and correlation through the usage of time series analysis techniques and producing filters based on the forecast. So to predict expected utilities, if you see for the perfect and successive trading, it is necessary to have accurate and reliable future predictions such as asset price, variation in usage, products in demand in statistical form through market research and time series data set. And if you are going to talk about this, the simulate series, after getting statistical output data of financial time series that can be used for creating simulations of future events, it helps us to determine the count of trades, expected trade costs and returns, required financial and technical investment, several risks in trading. So this is what the good examples of time series analysis. And presumed relationship, like recognition of the relationship between the time series and the other quantities, give us trading science to improve the existing fashion of trading. For example, to know the spreading of foreign exchange pair and its variation with proposal. Estimated trades can be inferred for a certain period for the forecasting, a wide spread to reduce transaction cost. So these are, if you see this particular image, you will find out that the bare boots of trend analysis is not confined to few domains, but it's spread across all the boards. Like if you talk about the budget analysis, if you talk about financial market analysis, or if you talk about census analysis, inventory management also can be taken care with the help of trend analysis. Economic forecasting, what could be the future of the company or the country as a whole, marketing and sales forecasting, yield projections, and seismological predictions, workload projections, and then military planning. So all those things are going to be taken care. So what we have seen that when you are going to talk about the trend analysis, it's not confined to few domains, but take into consideration the various domains which you have think of. So there are certain importance of time series analysis. It understands the past, what happened over the last year or months. Very easily you can recapitulate, and when you are formulating a graph, when you are going to do that analysis, I think the trend itself is quite self-explanatory in nature. And forecast the future. Governments want to know future of unemployment rate, percentage increase in cost of living, and companies to predict the demand for their products. So time series connects past, present and future. It's not like that. It is just talking about the present aspect or eliminating the past or not considering the future. So based on the trend analysis, you will find out that time series analytics is more talking about the trends. And if you see this particular image, you will find out that from the dot is initially going upward direction, then comes down, and then gradually going upward. So this is the manner, if you see the past, in the past the time series analytics was talking in this way, and real-time analytics is this, and state of variable is correlated to itself, and then predictive analytics is this, which is called the forecasting. So what we have, and they are common time series patterns. I think we have some of them we have discussed in our preceding sessions as far as correlation regression is concerned, but this particular session talks more about the purely random error, no recognition pattern. So this could be like this, and Curvilinear trend, if you are going to talk about quadratic or exponential, this could be like this. And increasing linear trend, so this is called linear analysis, which we have already done in the regression line also. And you see, and then seasonal pattern is there, where you see at the x-axis we have time, at the y-axis we have demand, and then the graph is moving in a zigzag manner, going upward, then coming down, then going up, and then going down. So this is called seasonal pattern, and then seasonal pattern plus linear growth. So what you have seen that the trend is here more talking about this way, where you will find out that first the trend is going in a zigzag manner, going upward, coming down, and then you will find out the linear growth is also there. So it had a combination of linear trend as well as the seasonal pattern. So these are the common time series pattern. And if you go more into the backdrop, you will find out that this trend analysis is quite important, and there are certain components of time series which we are going to discuss in our next session. And that particular session is going to talk more about the long-term movement or trend, short-term movement of trend, random or irregular movement of trend, and then when you are going to more emphasize on the short-term movements, I think the seasonal variation, cyclical variation is there. So just we can recapitulate what we have done. So this time series components, if you are more talking about, it's talking about the trend component, seasonal component, cyclical component, and irregular random component, which we are going to discuss in our next session in a more elaborative manner with certain good examples, or which can talk about how the trend is going to be changed with the change of time. And overall, if you go into the backdrop, you will find out that these are the things which is going to play a very important role. So anyway, I think we are going to wind up this particular session, and the coming next session is more focused on how the trend analysis component is going to be emphasized. Thank you very much. Thank you.